Hey y'all, how you doing? This is Divine Celiane. I am back. You are welcome here. Thank you so much for joining me. Missed you in the short time that we were apart. And if those that don't know me, sorry, I'm taking a moment. I am a divine healer. And I am an empathic seer and medium channeler. And I'm here to spread the message of love, because love is what it is all about. Love connecting us to everything, to ourselves especially, and co-creating to create the life that we need to bring in what we want. So, and with that, my housekeeping item, those of you that have been watching me, you know I am not a licensed therapist, so if you need professional help, please go and seek one. I am a spiritual advisor and guide. And that's from where my advice comes from, always coming from love, no matter how tough it gets. All right, y'all, with that, let's get started. So this message today is specific. I wanted to touch upon something that is actually dear to me, and it's a community that I'm in, but it is very dear to me. And it is something that concerns me of how people perceive. So I want to talk to you about this, and this is a message for my beloved disabled community. So we're going to talk about that because a lot of people do not understand how disabilities work. There are so many different ones, and when you don't understand something, you push it to the side. And so I want to be able to talk about some of these things. Okay. So first I'm going to go over the misconception. When disability rights started, and actually I got to go before the rights, because the rights happened because of the deplorable conditions that people were kept in. I want you to understand something, okay? Back, around late 1960s, mid 1970s. And I know this happened before. I know this happened before. I'm not looking at my notes. I'm not looking at my stats, but I'm giving you roundabout figures. When you had a disability, like when you had Down syndrome, when you had autism, because it presented differently on different levels, just like it does now. When you had like muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, and those kind of things, you were put in an institution that was like a mental ward, and you were forgotten about. The door was shut on you, and you were locked away from society because society felt it was imperfection. Some cultures to this day sees those with disabilities not only as less than perfect, but out of favor in God's eyes. Absolutely not true. Okay. Again, you don't know the karma that someone is working through or has to work through to have that disability and why that disability happens. So stop sitting up here and trying to play preacher. Okay. So, the conditions in which they were kept, being forgotten about, being put in beds in a room of 20 to 30 kids or people, and you were locked in the basement or you were locked on the floor, literally like you were a mental patient, literally, and you just sat there. Okay. This is the time when they had lobotomies and lobotomizing people, deadening parts of the brain, things like that. I would say this is after the bleeding phenomenon that was, in Europe, but many different tactics, many different horrific things happened to people with disabilities because people didn't understand these disabilities. Now you fast forward to today, okay? You fast forward to 50 years ago, actually before then, around 1976, I believe it is. You fast forward and you have the birth, it's around that time, the birth of the 504 movement, which gave rights to people with disabilities. Now you may ask, why was that important? Okay, if you wanted to go to school and you were in a wheelchair and they only had stairs, you couldn't go to that school, and that business didn't have to change that. If you couldn't understand the curriculum that you were getting, or you couldn't have access to it, that business did not including schools, did not have to give you access. They did not have to accommodate you. And so 504 movement had to begin to include people with disabilities. Then you have IDEA law, which is what I did with in schools. And that's the step up further to ensure equal benefit in education for our students and our teens and our adults. So it is a big deal. It is a very big deal. And I can't believe to this day, I will see a beautiful child wearing a Superman pajamas and a cape. And I know what he is. I can identify. I know enough based on my family, myself, and my students. So I know how to identify students that present certain disabilities. And parents have to give out a little card, so people are not looking at the child and making the child feel so bad. Right? And I've seen this. I've seen this. And I'm like, Or a child that has ADHD, or a person that has ADHD, can be adult, and basically human computer, and they cannot slow down. And people are getting frustrated at either how they're stemming, meaning doing something over and over again, repetitive, with their hands and things like that. It's the movement that calms them. And you're looking at them like, why are you here? You're disrupting stuff. Listen. People with disabilities have the right to be and go out as much as anybody else, and they have the right to have access as much as anyone else. That is a group that is forgotten. But I'm going to talk about mainly when it deals with being out in society and how you all can help with that. So let me explain. One thing people do not understand, that neurodivergent, and when I'm saying neurodivergent, okay, because I'm going to back up. Autism had a lot underneath its umbrella. Even disabilities we didn't even hear of today, but Asperger's was underneath it. ADHD actually was underneath autism. It wasn't as separate. It was actually underneath it way back in the day. And PDD-NOS, which they got rid of, which is pervasive developmental disorder, which is basically you present autism, but we don't know what's wrong with you. That's basically what it means. My oldest has that. And so there was a number, that was like at least 7 disabilities under autism umbrella back in the day. And they got rid of Asperger's, and they got rid of PDD-NOS. Now, just because they get rid of it, right, in the DSM-5, that's a whole totally different ballgame. We ain't gonna. Doesn't mean that the presenting symptoms are gotten rid of. Okay? One of those being social cues. Sometimes there are people, okay, whose disability is social cues, and they can't read them. And so I had a friend, dear friend of mine, who when I first came out as a performing artist was one of my biggest fans. And I just cherish him to this day. But he was misunderstood by a community who is usually very welcoming. It's a sport community, and they're usually very welcoming, but they were not with this particular person because he presents with one disability, but he has social cues issues. People didn't know. And he went up to someone that looked like they were older, and they weren't, and couldn't read the hint, the sarcasm, because people that present neurodivergent are literal. Okay? If you didn't know, we're very literal. So idioms, sarcasm, those kind of things, I get those, but I'm on a different level than others that don't get those. Some of them get the emotion and can feel the emotion and empathic that way. But if you're not present saying to their face what you mean, they don't get it. That's someone who can't read social cues. So my friend didn't understand because the young lady was not forthcoming and saying, no, don't talk to me. And instead went and ran and told other folks. Instead of his group understanding he doesn't get social cues, they ostracized him. Okay, so I felt, me being a special needs teacher, me being neurodivergent myself, and being a parent and advocate of that population. Listen, let me tell you something. Okay. Don't assume that when someone is approaching you and they don't want to be bothered with you, and you know when someone feels whether they have a disability or not. I'm going to say it that way. Okay. You can tell. For most people. Pay attention to whether or not they get your social cues. If you want them to go away, tell them, thank you, I'm not interested. Okay? That's the best thing you can do. But don't turn your shoulder. Don't sit up there and totally ignore and then expect them to get it. Because they'll just think, some of them will just think, oh, they're moving over there, let me go over there. Right? Not meaning any harm. Most don't mean any harm. But you're expecting them to read your social cues and they can't. And then you're getting on them for not. And then they end up in trouble. A lot of our population that's in jails are special needs people that don't have an understanding either of the system, of themselves, or what they present, or all they know is that. But because someone is not forthcoming telling them and then explaining it. And yes, for a lot of people, you can explain something and they still don't get it. Those are processing issues. We will hear you. We will see your mouth move. We still won't understand because there is a disconnect in the processing function, whether visually or auditorily or orally. Okay? Don't assume that everyone understands. Don't assume everyone picks up cues from their eyes. People that have visual processing issues cannot pick up those cues from their eyes. You don't know. So when you're talking to someone and you're about to push them, hey buddy, why don't you pay attention to see if they really understand? Because a lot of times they don't understand, and then by the time it's physical, they really don't understand, and they're in the fight or flight because they've been there all their life with people shitting on them and making fun of them and stuff. Most people with disabilities. And so they're already there. Then by the time the cops come and they can't articulate what they need to say to explain themselves, but they know what happened, for those that are able to cognitively do that, they're already in trouble. You got a party that can explain their way, not in the way of the other person, and there you go. Then we repeat the cycle. Why don't you do your due diligence as a person that may not present with a disability or may not have a disability to see? This is where it's talking about when you jump to the conclusion of just reacting instead of seeing and observing and paying attention. You know, martial artists go through this for a reason. They go through the art of being perceptive and seeing. I know boxers go through reading the body of how someone is going to move. But anyone that does a combat sport professionally, you should already know how to read somebody. Eyes, body language, and the energy that's coming off of them. You should already know how to do that. Unless you're just a fucking asshole hothead and you don't give a damn. But you should already know how to do that. I know that training. Okay? That's one. Parents. When you encounter, if you have a child that's being bullied or bullying someone that has a special need, when you encounter that, you should be talking to the teacher and asking why that student is allowed to do what they're doing or what supervision is over that student. Okay? If it's your child that's doing that, there's a plan that needs to be put in place for that child, depending on their behavior. And then we're going to be trying to figure out why their behavior is where they're at and what offset them, what happened. Okay. It is the community's responsibility, however, to pay attention and to help those that don't know. It is the community's responsibility to help those with those disabilities understand. This is one thing that upsets me with the school system with this, is because they don't give skill training anymore to those that are mild moderate, only those that are moderate severe disabilities. And what I mean by mild moderate disabilities is you're able to function and still live. The degree, don't ask to what degree. It is not to perfection. I read that in some IDA rules. It is not to perfection. We only teach them to functionality. I'm gonna keep it real with you, and I'm gonna let you know. We only teach them to functionality. It does not have to be an exceptional level. That is in IDA rules. It doesn't. That is up to the discretion of the school and the team and parents. You're a big part of that team, so you're to make sure that somewhere along the line they're getting some type of life skills training. But they don't give that anymore to my moderate students. So that has been a fight for parents for the longest time. Well, what about when you get the people that graduate from school and that are in these transition programs, right? And trying to take care of themselves and stuff. You don't understand how extremely difficult it is for people, some people with disabilities, to even make friends, have people around them, want to be around them. My children were fortunate. They had a school culture where it was fostered. They had unified sports. So you had students that was part of Special Olympics and special needs playing with students who were gen ed population students and athletes. And it was a beautiful thing. Out where we are, it builds that. There are a lot of schools and a lot of places that don't build that. Okay. So there are a lot of people that are not aware of people even with disabilities, and then when they do see the, what's wrong with them? Nothing's wrong with them. That's just how they're made. What's wrong is how you're reacting. Now, yes, it can be a shock. Absolutely. It can. But if they're a part of the community, it's the community's responsibility to help them see, help them learn the social cues, because they don't learn them in school. I'm gonna say that again, y'all. In today's 2023, okay, they learn some maybe in speech, maybe some in OT, maybe some in physical therapy. OT is occupational therapy. Maybe some there. Maybe there is a social lunch bunch group that they're able to sit with and have a conversation. That's all some kids get. Most kids and adults don't even get that. They'll get socialization, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is guided and it is structured. They just have them sit there and talk. And then it's led by a counselor. Some. Okay? It really depends. It really depends. But if you're sitting up there thinking, well, they should have got that in school. No. And you don't understand how extremely hard it is on the parents either. I should know. My children have special needs. I myself had them. So I know as a student, I know as an adult, I know as a teacher, and I know as watching my own children. You don't understand. All around, it is difficult for all parties. And you don't understand the extent. There was one parent I knew of whose child could not literally get dander on his blankets and things like that. He'd break out into hives. She was constantly washing his things. Constantly. I was like, oh man. Like, you don't know people's plight. And this is why we say be kind to folks, because you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what's going to set them off. You have no clue. Disabilities or not. You have no clue. And you have no clue how we're excluded in so many places. You have no clue. There's certain roles I can't take because they don't take people in a wheelchair. I couldn't do a certain character at a park because I couldn't be in my wheelchair long term. Because that character's not in a wheelchair. You understand? And if they feel it's not as important, they ain't gonna worry about it. They're not gonna have it. You understand what I'm saying? You have no clue how much we're excluded because of how it looks. And then, for those of us that try to teach love to everyone else, you don't understand the constant battle it is for that particular group to really love who they are and accept who they are, despite what everyone else thinks. It is extremely difficult for them to make friends and have connections. It is extremely difficult for us to do that. Sometimes it's extremely difficult for us to even deal with people, period. And then on top, to have some of y'all shit on us, then you make us not want to deal with people, and then we wonder, was everyone like that? And we have to teach our others, no, everyone is not like that. That's just an idiot. because they don't understand. Listen, if you're someone who presents with a disability, I'm here to tell you right now, boom, you're loved, and there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Okay? Just because people cannot accept you, you accept your self-love. You accept yourself. Because there's nothing wrong with you. And I know there's not a lot presented for us. And there will be. We make our own way. In this day and age, you got to make your own way. Okay? See what I'm saying? So, my loves, you are uniquely beautiful like everyone else. You are a part of everyone else. Okay? And I want you, no matter what disability you got, to be strong, to be that force, be that voice, if you feel the need to be that voice for those that don't have one. But baby, there is always a place for you, despite what other people may say or think. And for those of you that have issues with social cues, it is all right. Have the courage to let people know when you're talking to them. If you don't want me to address something, or if I make you feel uncomfortable, please tell me and I'll walk away. Because people don't understand that you don't know how to read social cues. So you're going to have to help yourself do that. You understand? You're going to have to help yourself do that. You know, I'm someone who never wanted to present like I was. And it took my community to say to me, hey, why not? You know, I didn't want to have to be in a wheelchair. And they're like, but it saves your legs. Doesn't mean you can't walk. It just saves your legs. And I was like, that's true. That's true. Makes it a little easier. That's true. And they're like, you're absolutely gorgeous. You're absolutely beautiful. Why not? You know what I'm saying? Let me explain this journey real quick. For those of you that listen to some of my other videos, I was in a musical called 504 the Musical for disabled people. And the character I played was a 70-year-old black woman who was in a wheelchair, who was one of those that was kept caged like a bird. And she never thought she was beautiful. Ever. And I had the privilege of leading the final song. And those of you that know musicals, that's a very important song in the musical, right? And she finally was able to stand and felt beautiful enough. That character was more than a character for me. That character spoke volumes to me. And I remember feeling no one should ever feel that way or experience that. Ever. And so I was meant to play that part. I was meant to feel those feelings. And when I was singing that song, I was in tears. I hate crying when I'm singing because I ain't messing up the song. But I was in tears. I couldn't. There was no way I could do it and not be in tears. Not feel that character. Not feel that pain. And I'm like, I understand now. I get it. And that's when I was able to accept my disabilities that I presented, but I didn't know for sure. Because, you know, when you're around people that don't believe you have anything, or ain't nothing wrong with you, and you're stifling the fact that they could get help and progress. Parents don't do that. If your child presents to have a disability, talk to the schools. You write them a letter, and you let them know you want them tested. Do not sit up there and act like it's a shame on you. It ain't got nothing to do with you. They got their genes from you. So if it's a shame on you, where they get it from. I'll wait. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to have to go there like that, but I am so tired of seeing certain students and kids and adults not getting the help because family is a shame. Ain't got nothing to do with you. They got their genes from you. Help them out. So, community, universal community, who is supposed to be tied together in love. Each one teach one. Pay it forward by when someone doesn't have those cues. Kindly and in love, teach them the proper way to read someone. In that moment, teach them it's okay. This is what this looks like. Try to put that in memory. Visually put it in your memory bank. Okay? And tell someone, those of you that have disabilities that don't have those social cues, tell someone, if I make you uncomfortable, please let me know. And I will step back and I'll walk away. Because I don't have that understanding like most people. And most people will appreciate you saying that so that they can understand. But understand, both sides, everyone is in their own scripts, in their own times, in what they're doing. And a lot of times people don't pay attention to someone else unless they present something uncomfortable and bring in pain. People, universal community, don't let it get to that point. Each one teach one. It is about love. It is about love. Teach that love. All right, y'all. I love you. This was something dear to me. I had to talk about it. Because this is a problem that can be solved within the community itself. Of everyone. All right, y'all. I love you. I do. And always, always love you, accept you, grow with you. You got this. All right, y'all. Namaste.